Back here with more Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibler, and I'm very excited to be joined by our next guest. What he's doing, I think the company has an amazing mission, but I want him to explain it himself. So why don't we go ahead and bring him on right now. It is Justin Ching from JSchool. Hello, Justin.
Hey, Greg, how's it going, man? Thanks for having me on the show.
Doing great. Yeah, thanks so much for hopping in here. You know, we were talking about the school here just a little bit ago on the show, but I figured maybe since you're on here, why don't we have you walk us through what it is that JSchool does, what your mission is.
First of all, I like how you call it the school. I don't think I've heard anyone call it shorthand yet, so I'm going to steal that.
Okay, good.
So JSchool's mission is to empower underrepresented communities to tell their story in their own voices. We're a production company that's really focused on marginalized groups, i.e. people of color, women, the LGBT plus community, and frankly, a lot of others that I don't think we always talk about. But, my goal is to help the voices out there that are not being told and to give them the ability to have a first person narrative. I think a lot of times when we talk about storytelling, we have a lot of great people on camera, and certainly we're in this period where there's sort of unprecedented diversity on camera, but behind the camera, the leadership in terms of the directors, the writers, the producers are not always reflective of the identity of the people on camera. So my mission and the mission of JSchool is to make those more aligned.
I think that's a great idea because that is something that probably does get overlooked quite a bit in that, you're right, on camera, that's really easy to see. We can see the diversity there, but yeah, behind the scenes, how many people follow along with that and actually have, an idea of what's going on that side of it. So for you, like, where did you get your start in all of this?
Yeah, look, for me, I kind of came from a remarkably unremarkable place. So I was born and raised in San Bernardino, which is most people only know now, unfortunately, because of the mass shooting a couple of years ago. But I think that actually is very symptomatic of the way that place is. So it's a place where, you're surrounded by mostly Black and Latino folks in my specific community. And then around that are sort of self-proclaimed, redneck white folk. And again, I use that not flippantly, it's self-proclaimed.
Right. Yeah.
They would themselves. NASCAR is one of the biggest industries we have out there. And next to that are literal rock quarries, strawberry fields, and a lot of Amazon shipment centers. Most people, it's the last big freight truck stop on the way to Los Angeles. Okay. And that's predominantly our traffic. And so when you think about that place, it made me very much, on one hand, value movies and television as my window to the world. That's a date myself here, but I didn't really have social media growing up. So the way that I learned about the world and the way that I learned about myself thereby was through movies and television. And that was very much the way that I sort of found writing and creativity as my outlet.
I think I was going to ask, how do you go from being in that environment? It doesn't sound like it's, necessarily a creative environment for getting into film. So I think that's interesting about how you looked at it from that side. You didn't go into NASCAR. So you get into
cars. And I know you guys have a car show, which I think is fantastic.
We do. Yeah. Oh, I mean, cars are great, but I think this is a really interesting story of how you went through this process and became this. Like, so you become interested in films and you're learning about the world through that. That's one aspect, but how do you start making films or even, going about this process to where you're at right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, I very much valued writing as my only sort of creative outlet and the way that I expressed myself growing up, going through some tough times. And I think that for me, I never really saw filmmaking as this career path. It was this very, very foreign thing. Like San Bernardino is only maybe an hour and a half outside of LA, but emotionally very distant, or it's symbolically very distant. We don't have even local TV channels. We pipe in everything either from the desert or from Los Angeles. But if you're coming from a place where truck stops are one of your big industries and they're showing you Hollywood premieres on ABC7, you're like, well, there's a huge disconnect there, right? Like it might as well be France. And so I never really saw that as a direct pathway professionally, but personally, I was writing a lot and I was using that as my only outlet. And then when I was 17, the two most important things in my life happened. I got into a really great college, University of Pennsylvania. Shout out to all the Quakers out there. That changed my life in terms of opening up my worldview and understanding that there was the option for storytelling to be a career path. And then on the other hand, personally, I unfortunately suffered this tragedy. I lost a friend to suicide. And that experience, going into college was sort of this shattering to then have to rebuild from that and sort of reprioritize the things in life, but also understand that now that I was in this new world in college where there was all this opportunity, that maybe there was an opportunity to take the storytelling that was my only really coping mechanism, the writing that was my only coping mechanism, and combine that with these professional aspirations. And that's very much a lot of the way I arrived today. And there are some great people I met along the way who I'm still in touch with, who gave me my first opportunities. I'm so grateful that they saw something in me.
I think that's so cool, that you took those different experiences and turned that into your motivation to get to this point. And now you have JSchool. How do you reach out to other people? Your goal is to help these underrepresented communities who may not even realize there's an opportunity there, to do this kind of work, maybe are interested, but I just don't even know where to begin. Whoever it is, how do you reach out to them?
Yeah, a lot of it, as you kind of mentioned, is not as obvious because to the masses, right, you watch a movie and you see a lot of diverse faces and you think to yourself, okay, that's all happening within this container. You have no idea what's happening in the background world. I had no idea when I was growing up watching Spielberg. I'm like, I have no idea how that's made. Yep. The numbers right now, and hopefully in the next year or so, they'll improve. But the Directors Guild of America, the DGA, just released their diversity numbers, and it's at an all-time low, despite the fact that the content out there seems to be more diverse. So a lot of what I do, I think, is first of all, raise my hand and say, look, like, I'm here for you. And a lot of the projects I work on, it's not about me being the director or the writer and like getting my hands on the creative and molding it in my image, right? It's molding it in their image and just saying, hey, for this one, I just want to be your sponsor, right? I want to be a producer who's going to be the person who helps you secure financing, to help mentor you on things that you may not know yet. But this is your show. This is your movie. And I think it takes a certain distinction, I think, a certain just like mental shift to say, hey, this isn't really all about me. This is about someone else. And so a lot of the way that people have reached out to me, frankly, has just been cold. Like they will just email me or hit me up on LinkedIn or social media, and I'll take a look at their work and I'll ask them, I'll say like, how did you find me? What is it about me that seems to be something you want to work with? And I'm working on a project with these two young guys right now. And they're two young gay men who have the story about sort of the intercultural clash between them being sort of these young gay yuppies and then going into like a community where they're potentially gentrifying it and being sort of aware that they're doing that. And they said, like, if you're a young man of color who's gay, there are only a handful of people you can really reach out to, most of whom are famous, right? Way bigger than I am. Barry Jenkins, the director of Moonlight, and others, right?
Right.
And then there are people who seem to be like willing to work with others and be accessible. And they said that, I was one of those guys and I was really touched by that. But I also use that as sort of a point of validation where I said, hey, like, there are people out there who are just dying to tell these stories and dying to talk to someone who will give them the time of day to even just say, hey, this is good. Maybe this is not so good, but at least give them the opportunity.
Right. Because, I mean, a lot of times you don't know what needs to happen to tell a story, but somebody to listen is important. I think kind of just to go back to a car reference, it sounds like, you're providing the vehicle, but they're the driver. It's their path, but you're helping them get to a point where they can go on down that path.
The challenge is to not be a backseat driver, which I think is a tough part of the industry.
Yeah, right. Not have them, not try to direct them in the wrong way. Let's talk about some of your projects that you have right now. What can people go check out that's completed?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of a portfolio work, you can always look at my website. So our website is j-school.co. So not .com, but .co.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of completed works. Stuff that we have coming up, probably the thing I'm most passionate about talking about is there's a documentary short called Esfuerzo, which is Spanish for effort, about Mexican migrant workers in the wine industry. And I think it is this amazing clash of cultures, as well as this epitome, I think, of the immigration debate, where you have these Mexican-American migrant workers, many of whom are undocumented, working and servicing this very luxury industry, where the beneficiaries of the industry tend to be very conservative and, frankly, are the kinds of people who would want to put those workers on the other side of a wall. And I think that that's a very fascinating, dramatic telling of the role that these people play in terms of not just agriculture, but the fabric of our larger, society. It's right now just a documentary short. It went to Napa and a couple other festivals, and we were very, very proud of that. The director, Elena, had reached out to me to talk about the project, and now her and I are going through the process of developing it into a feature documentary. And that's very much, our focus now is trying to meet more families out there who have had this experience, also identify more filmmakers who can join our team, who can, again, speak to this in a first-person way, in a way that I really can't, right? I grew up with a lot of migrant workers because of my hometown, but that wasn't my experience, and so I don't want to try to, co-opt that. I want to just, again, sponsor it and do what I can to make sure the project gets made.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting story to tell that that a lot of people haven't thought about. The migrant workers in wine industry. I mean, that's a really, really interesting topic.
Yeah, we tend to think about it like citrus or corn. The way we talk about migrant workers, and we sort of label it as sort of unskilled labor. I mean, anyone who's ever worked on a farm or spoken worked on a farm, that it is a labor of love, and it's really a craft. And with wine, you're talking about something where it's all craft, right?
Right.
The year that it's made, the weather pattern, the plot of land that it's planted on, all determine the premium value of this product. And a lot of these winemakers are in this real conundrum because they are sort of in the camp politically where they would want to have stronger immigration regulation, build a wall, export a ton of people. But they would know if they would do that, they would serve against their own best interests, because the luxury wine industry would collapse without these workers, because they would have to go 5 years without a foreman or without a lead farmer who actually knows how to plant the grapes. And so they're stuck in this really interesting paradox that I think really punctuates the immigration debate.
Well, and it is. It's actually really interesting, and it's I want to direct people to the right place to go too. So it's j-school.co, where people can go and check that out. And is that a good place too to reach out if somebody wants to get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can reach out over there, or you can reach out on my social media across all platforms. It's Justin R. Ching. That's C-H-I-N-G.
Fantastic. Well, Justin, thank you so much for hopping on, to talk about your work. Really interesting stuff, and best of luck as you continue forward with this. And excited to see the stories that come out of JSchool.
Thanks so much, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Justin.